Hello everyone. Wanted to do a bit of a paint-along video because I've been doing quite a bit of painting of my wargame figures recently, and I find it helps if there's something on YouTube, just to take up the time while you're painting, give you something to listen to. And there don't seem to be that many paint-along videos. The majority of them tend to be live broadcasts, which is fine. So it might take an hour or two while they're just painting their figures and the camera's focused on the bench and the figures they're painting, and I'm not particularly keen on doing that myself. I like listening to them, but that's the whole point. I listen to them and I don't watch them. And in particular, I don't like showing unpainted figures because I always feel a bit embarrassed about them. They don't really come together until near the end of the painting process, and I always am reluctant to show my progress. So what I thought I'd do is just point the camera out of the window and show you what I might be able to see. I live on top of a hill and can see quite a long distance, and when I was looking out the window earlier I noticed a sort of strange pyramidal object just beyond what you can see there is the edge of Plymouth Argyle football stadium, although you wouldn't know it. So I had a look on my binoculars and I realised what it is. It's not a building, a new building or anything like that. It's a warship that's in Devonport dock at the moment. It's a Dutch ship called the Paintalong, which is a sort of support ship, and what you're looking at there is the top of the sort of, I don't know what you'd call it, it's a tower on it, and the top of it has a radar system which is similar to the Samson system on the British destroyers such as HMS Diamond, which is in the news at the moment out in the Red Sea, being attacked by Houthi rebels and so on. And they have a big tower like that with a spinning radar sensor device on the top to warn them of incoming missiles and so on. And the reason it's on such a high tower is to give it a view over the horizon so it can see long distances as well. But anyway, yeah, I thought I would focus in on that. It's quite a long way off, so I'm having to use the digital zoom to get it kind of in the centre of the picture. Just paint my figures and pass a little bit of time with anyone else who wants to join me and see what comes up in the way of conversation. So the first thing that I really wanted to talk about was my YouTube channel and where I see it going and so on. And as long-term subscribers to my channel will know, I never really intended it to be an entirely wargaming related content channel, which is the reason I have so many other kind of topics on the channel. Things like videos of Dartmoor and of ships, better quality than this, sort of up close and so on. And I talk about subjects that some people might not be interested in hearing about, like politics and things like that, and I make no apology for doing so. But at the same time, I have to recognise that my channel is, mainly viewed by people who, are interested in wargaming and want to see that sort of that hobby. I don't have a problem with showing you other things. I find it kind of curious, really, that people almost demand that I stick to wargaming and ignore everything else that I'm interested in. I mean, the drone footage is another element of that. I've started putting up pictures of I've take from my drone of the local scenery and so on. Yeah, but I have to kind of work around that, really. As I say, I don't want to apologise for everything else, but at the same time, I have to kind of cater for my main audience, and I find that's kind of regrettable in a way, because my channel has kind of developed. I've got a lot of subscribers now, and I'm grateful to all of them. I think it's over sort of 2,500 subscribers now. But I really think when channels get to that size, they begin to have a problem. One of them is I much prefer watching channels that are smaller than my own. I don't like the attention that a lot of channels pay to gaining subscribers and gaining views and so on, and they do that as far as I can see, mainly to to increase their revenue, their advertising revenue. And in a way, you can see how that they can be driven to do that. The more views, the more subscribers they have, the more revenue they make. And it may not be their primary goal. They may be just enthusiastic about their hobby and want to kind of share that with the rest of the world. But at the same time, it does kind of cause their channels to all sort of aim for the same thing, for the same views. They're not competing for the same subscribers and the same viewers, because it's perfectly, they're not. It's perfectly possible for a single subscriber to subscribe to multiple channels, and to be able to watch them all. But what they are doing is trying to ape the success of other large channels, and what that means is that you tend to get a kind of a dilution of the content. Everything becomes very much the same. You watch channels and they all have the same type of content. A lot of them try and make their channels appear a little bit more professional by having rock music kind of introductions, and adopting a lot of the techniques that YouTube suggest in order to gain subscriptions, gain views, and keep retention and so on. And it does turn it does make that there are very few. Once the channel gets to that size, there are very few that have a unique kind of selling point. To my mind, it all becomes very samey, and I much prefer watching the smaller channels. Especially with wargaming. I do watch, just as my channel has got a lot of different subjects on it. I do watch a lot of different types of channel that deal with different different aspects of life, and different hobbies, different spheres of interest, and so on. But at the same time, I do like the channels that I watch to be much smaller than my own. I like the ones that don't show a great deal of care about presentation, maybe. So they're a lot more amateur. Um, I'm not saying that they're poor quality, just a lot more interest in just voicing interests and sharing their hobbies with me and with other viewers. So channels, I'll name a few, but this by no means all of the channels, and I'll just talk about wargaming ones, because I imagine that most of the people that are going to watch this are going to be wargamers, especially as I've introduced it as being a paint-along video. But channels like Zen Miniature Painting, I think his name's David, forgive me if I got the name wrong, Terry Crick, Ian at Bucko's Piffle, Kits with Karen, although her channel is now beginning to grow a little bit, but she's getting into quite a few hundreds now, I think. But I much prefer it when a channel is in at that kind of level. There seems to me to be a greater degree of, I suppose, intimacy is one word, a kind of connection with their viewers. When you get to over a couple of thousand, then it's quite hard to maintain a kind of relationship with all of your subscribers. And another really weird aspect of that is that you often hear it remarked, particularly on the larger channels, that when that person looks at their analytics, the majority of their views are non-subscribers. It's really, really strange. So, I mean, I'm aware of channels that have got, say, 3,000 subscribers, and yet their videos may only get about 100 views. So what's going on there? Like 2,900 of their subscribers aren't bothering to watch the videos that they put up. Doesn't really make sense to me. And it becomes even less understandable when you think that of that 100, maybe only 30 are actually subscribed to the channel. It's very, very difficult to fathom. I can't quite work it out. But what I'm trying to say really is that I do find increasingly, as my channel grows, I'm less interested in making videos for it, because I don't think they're really reaching the people who get me, who understand what I'm trying to do with my channel. And I think people like David at Zen Miniature Painting and the others do kind of get me. They do understand what I'm trying to do, and how I'm trying to talk about the wargaming hobby in relationship to all my other hobbies, and to my personality in general, and to my life in general. And I'm not trying to go down that road of of putting out these sort of vanilla type videos that just get really, frankly, they get just sort of boring to watch in the end. I like seeing well painted minis and so on, but the constant repetition of I don't know, battle reports for war games rules that do nothing for me, but that are very popular, or topics of discussion about the future of war game shows, or the contrast paints, or all that kind of thing. Just I end up sort of not watching them in the end, and again, if a video isn't long enough for me to be able to sit down and get a decent number of figures painted while I'm listening to it, then I don't bother to listen to those either. So videos that are less than 5 minutes long often don't get my attention either. So yeah, that's one thing I really wanted to talk about. I mean, in particular, I really want to make a video response to Zen Miniature Paint, a recent Zen Miniature Painting video where he was talking about the use of libraries, and how he was disposing of a lot of his book collection and so on, and to make room and to declutter and make use of libraries more. And I thought that was a really interesting subject. I mean, he was probably referring mainly just to wargaming topics and history books and so on, but I think you could extend extend it out to entire book collections and so on. And I have completely the opposite take on the subject. That I just buy books, all the time, and am constantly building up, my library, and my bookshelves are collapsing, quite literally collapsing under the weight of all my books. And I did want to make a response video just to talk about that, but it's physically and practically difficult for me to do it, because my book, the room that I keep most of my books in, is so cluttered that it would take me a good couple of hours just to clear a space in front of my bookshelves in order to be able to film them. But the other thing is it goes back to this whole subject about trying to reach the people that I feel get me, and not to not to kind of attract the attention of the bulk of my subscribers, who are probably are subscribing to my channel for other reasons, and who won't be interested in listening to a video on the subject of my books and how I feel about collecting books and so on, and will probably react through disappointment or disgust or whatever at the video by disliking it, when really I don't want them to watch it in the first place. So it's how to kind of make a video like that, especially one that takes so much effort to do, and making it worthwhile doing it by not having so many people give it a thumbs down. It's just, I just really wish there was some way of flagging the fact that they're not going to like it in the first place, so that they don't waste their time. But then I do have this other view as well, that I do think a lot of activity on YouTube is actually artificial. There aren't real people behind the activity, so there are lots of fake accounts and false identities and so on, and activity happening for reasons other than interest in a particular topic. I won't go into that too deeply because it's sort of taking me off the point really. But yeah, I do think a lot of likes, dislikes, views, etc. don't have a real person behind them anyway. I think they're there to ape the behaviour of a real person, but they're not actually genuine views in the first place. Yeah. So anyway, that's mainly the reason, David, if you do listen to this video, that I haven't made a response video as yet. I'm partly deterred from doing so, but knowing the reaction that it's going to get from the bulk of the people that are going to watch it, and partly the fact that it's not going to repay that that effort that I'm going to have to make in terms of trying to clear a space to get to my bookshelves to talk about it. But I do think it's a really interesting subject, and it's made me think a lot about why I like owning books and why I do collect them, and the pleasure that has brought me over the years and so on. But anyway, the other reason that I pointed the camera out of the window rather than at my painting desk, and it's purely coincidental that today I happened to spot that ship in the distance and thought it would make a suitable object to zoom in on and concentrate the camera view on, was to talk about a subject that's actually going on out there in that particular spot that you're looking at the moment, and the wider area around it. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, on Radio 4, I think it was in the morning on the Today programme, and it was during that period, this sort of turn of year period where they don't have a great deal to report on, and they scrabble a little bit to have news items sometimes to fill the airtime. They had a little piece on a phenomenon that's been noticed in Bristol called the Bristal hum, and what that is a noise, a humming noise, that in fact can be very disturbing to people who can hear it, and it has been investigated really, because it does seem to cause certain individuals severe problems, and it's something that quite a lot of people report in Bristol, but the reason that caught my attention, and it was part of a piece about noise pollution in general, how modern life and the modern city in particular does seem to have added to a background noise that some people are more sensitive to than others. So it was kind of a piece about noise pollution. But the reason it caught my attention was that there is a very similar phenomenon in Plymouth. It's actually been going on since the 1950s, so for about 50 years. There has been intermittent reports and people complaining about this noise, especially around the dockyard area. So it's often been suggested that the noise was coming from the dockyard, but not everyone hears it. I certainly don't hear it. I don't notice it, and it's very hard to kind of pin down, because noises, you know, it's not necessarily a case of them being imagined, but they can be perceived for a lot of different reasons. Things like tinnitus and so on. So they can actually be internal to the hearer, rather than an external, rather than coming from an external source. But the problem arises, of course, when you get that coincidence. It's not a coincidence, but a coincidence of groups of people all reporting the same phenomenon. And of course, tinnitus, something like tinnitus, isn't unique to one individual or several individuals. It's quite a common phenomenon itself. So it becomes even harder to know whether these people are reporting the same noise that's being generated by an external source, or are all reporting on similar pathologies, which are specific to their own senses, and are internal to them, but it's a common phenomenon that a lot of people share. So it kind of raises the whole issue about reality, and what is real, because for the people that can hear that hum, it's a very real phenomenon, whether or not it stems from within or without. It's something that they are experiencing, and many of them suffer. Many of them are disturbed by the noises, and irritated by it, or even find the noises painful, and are discomforted by it. Not just disturbed, but discomforted. But for people who aren't experiencing that, how are they supposed to deal with it? How are they supposed to react to it? The unsympathetic will just dismiss it, but the more sympathetic will try to seek a solution. Because if there is an external source, then it can be silenced or subdued in some way. But the problem is tracking down the source. And over the years in Plymouth, there's been all kinds of offerings, suggestions as to what might be causing it. I mean, I mentioned the dockyard, which is feasible. There's lots of activity going on in the dockyard. There's it's lit up at night. There's constant traffic. There's ships' engines. All kinds of possible sources that might be, accumulating and adding to that background kind of noise. Other people have suggested overhead power lines. There's been more wacky kind of solutions. Suggestions such as it's from UFOs or something like that. One of the most recent solutions suggested was from a French scientist, of all things, who and this goes to the point that it is being it is being recognised as a thing, and scientists are trying to explore the problem scientifically. But this French scientist, anyway, said it was. I've got the article on the laptop here, so I'll just read it. According to the senior research scientist at Centre National de la research scientifique, which I think is a bit of a, a kind of, it's not made up. They probably they probably exist. They must exist, but it sounds to me like a bit of a kind of a bogus institution. So not a particularly serious French academic body. But according to the senior research scientists, the aggravating and divisive humming pitch is down to the pressure of waves vibrating on the ocean floor. Apparently only about 2% of people can hear the movements, but for those who can, it causes misery. So that was kind of, I thought that was interesting in itself, in that when I heard this radio programme about the Bristal hum, that Bristol and Plymouth, geographically, I suppose, are very, very similarly situated. Bristol, is a port. I mean, not as important a port as it once was, but it's certainly, a tidal river. So there are similarities there, in that the ocean, the pressure of waves could be vibrating on an ocean floor, and then feeding back, and then only people who whose auditory senses are attuned to those vibrations will hear them. It does kind of have a sort of, I was about to use the word pseudo-scientific, but that's probably demoting it, but it does have a kind of quasi-scientific basis to it there, especially when you think that other other senses that we all possess can be particularly attuned in some people and not in others. I mean, some people have a better sense of smell and can detect odours that others can't. I mean, certainly with vision, it's well known that some people can be colourblind. So if you have the blessing of full colour vision, then there's no real way that you can describe that to someone who can't see the same colours as you. It's just something that you're sensitive to and they are not. But you're never really going to be able to describe that to them, because you literally can't paint a picture for them. Even if you use the appropriate colours of paint, they would just see them as greys or black and white. And now it's not so well known, but it's been established that you do get people who are what's called tetrachromatic, who are able to see another kind of colour that people with what you might describe as ordinary vision can't see. So they're able to see a colour that's kind of in the sort of violet kind of area of the spectrum. And interestingly enough, those people tend to be female, and very often they have children who are colour blind. So the whole thing seems to be linked. But anyway, that's, again, I'm getting off the point. But that's just to sort of demonstrate that it is quite feasible that there are some people out there who, are hearing a genuine sound that others can't see. But as I said earlier, it does raise that whole subject about reality and what actually is reality. Because other people, something like ghosts are just as real. God is just as real to some people as that is, but other people don't believe in ghosts, they don't believe in God. But to dismiss the fact that it is real for other people is a mistake. Because you have to kind of understand that reality is different depending on the individual. But it then becomes dangerous when people begin to believe in something that that can't possibly be real, and vice versa. So the other day, again on the radio, I was listening to Loose Ends on Saturday evening, and they were interviewing, Clive Anderson was interviewing Don Jolly, who has just written a book about conspiracy theories, and he was talking about all the kind of barking mad conspiracy theories that there are out there, such as he did talk about flat earthers for a while, and flat earthers some often deny the existence of Australia and New Zealand. They just don't believe that there's such place as Australia, and anybody who whenever they see anybody who or hear anybody who purports to be Australian, they think they're actors. They're put up to it. But it's more extreme than that. There's even a kind of a group of people, a sizable number of people who don't believe that Finland exists. They think that Finland is occupied by sea. It's part of the Baltic Sea, and that it was invented as a conspiracy in 1917 between Japan and Russia, so that those two countries could fish that particular area, whilst denying anyone else the right to send fishing boats into it, because it's crazy, isn't it? It doesn't make sense at all. But this is the theory anyway, that all the history of Finland, any Finnish people that that you meet, they're all actors. The history of Finland's been completely contrived. All the culture of Finland, Sibelius, everything has all been invented simply so to allow Russia and Japan, to fish this area of Finland, and whatever, as Don Jolly said, you cannot argue. You cannot argue with these people. Whatever rational argument you come up with to counter their beliefs, they will come up with a counter argument, and if they do begin to finally lose the argument, they will just accuse you of being a stooge of the conspiracy, to being in the pay of whoever it profits the conspiracy to maintain. So this is why it gets dangerous, because if you were, say, to dismiss the Plymouth hum out of hand as a conspiracy, then constant dismissal of every single unexplained phenomenon that might have conspiracy theorists leaping in to support their pet conspiracy, such as Martians or something like that, UFOs or whatever, reptiles of the royal family doing it, or the hum is there to spread COVID or something like that, then people who are genuinely hearing that noise, will get pushed into that frustrated camp, and begin to think, well, if they're dismissing my very real, sort of sense of a noise, then maybe there is something to the conspiracy that the flu jab or the COVID jab is actually implanting a chip into me or something like that. So, you know, it begins to reinforce the barking mad conspiracies as well as the ones that, you know, might be genuine. So you do have to be very careful. But then at the same time, if you give too much credence to some of these wacky views, or you're too sympathetic, you know, then it can have a negative effect on society. You know, so things like the constant BBC attempts to maintain a balance, for instance during the COVID epidemic, and giving airtime and TV space and so on to people who were arguing against having the vaccine for whatever, you know, reason, you know, in my opinion, was completely the wrong thing to do, because all that was going to happen, people who had already had the COVID jab, for instance, and, you know, the COVID vaccine unequivocally was of benefit to humanity, benefit to society, saved lives and so on. So, you know, I don't think any, you know, there should have been any tolerance of COVID conspiracy theorists and anti-vaccination speeches. But all that the BBC were doing by airing that kind of, allowing people who had that opinion to have their voice, was that people who had already had the jab weren't going to be able to subtract it from their veins. They weren't going to be able to take it out and give it back. So it was going to have no effect on people who had already had the jab, other than possibly to worry them temporarily, maybe. But people who were still thinking about having the jab might have been put off unnecessarily. So, you know, it wasn't going to have any positive outcome, allowing those people to express their opinions. You know, so yes, there is sort of freedom of speech, but for the BBC to it was irresponsible of the BBC, I think, in my opinion, to allow that kind of spill. But anyway, I've been going on for a while now, haven't I? So I've finished the bit of painting that I wanted to do, so I think I will stop at that point. Yeah, I might do future videos like this, you know, just to give people something to listen to while they're chatting, but I'm probably not going to be talking much about wargaming subjects. I can do that, you know, when I show you figures and so on. So, you know, I'll keep my wargaming related chat to, you know, I'll contain my wargaming chat within my wargaming videos, but at the same time, this kind of chat is aimed at people who are sitting there painting wargames figures, but maybe it'll be of interest to other people who subscribe to my channel or watch my channel without subscribing. Anyway, so thanks for listening, and see you again later. Bye for now.